Hello, friends. I'm Reverend Ann Kemper, pastor here at Covenant. Thank you for joining us this evening for Reading on the Rock. Tonight's book is called The Conjure Woman. It's about trusting someone whom others think is not worthy.
Hi, my name is Tracy Jackson-Adams, and I will be reading for you today The Conjure Woman by William Miller, illustrated by Teresa D. Schaefer, Anthem Books for Young Readers. The Conjure Woman. Madame Zena, the Conjure Woman, lived alone in the woods. Her house had no windows, and the door was always shut. Gourds and other vines hung down from her roof. A crow made its nest in her chimney. Some people feared Madame Zena. They said she made the moon burn red, killed stray calves, turned the river into salt. But when a child was sick, when the doctor and the preacher had no answers, the worried parents turned to Madame Zena. One night, a boy named Toby burned with fever. His body ached, and all he wanted to do was sleep. His mother and father carried him from their cabin through the freezing night woods all the way to the Conjure Woman's house. Madame Zena took the boy into her arms and closed the door. Around his neck, she tied a bag of herbs. Around them both, she drew a circle. And then she sang a song, strange words, soft music, into his ear. Together, they flew through the night. Above the winter fields, across the dark ocean to their African homeland. In a village beside a stream, Toby met his ancestors. There were chiefs and princesses, wise men and beggars, children hiding behind their mothers' skirts. They opened their arms to welcome him, made a bed for him beside the roaring fire. Then the old ones formed a circle around his bed and prayed in voices that rang through the night. A tall man brushed his face with a bright green feather. Another cooled his skin with oil from a coconut. A girl no bigger than Toby gave him a cup of strong black tea in taste of sweet gum and pepper, roots that grew in the wild forest. At last, the Conjure Woman knelt beside his bed, blew a handful of dust, red and gold, into his eyes. Toby looked around the circle, saw himself reflected in the eyes of all his people. He felt strong again, strong enough to get up from his bed, touch the faces of the ones who healed him. Toby held tight and waved goodbye as he and the Conjure Woman rose above the fire. Once more, they crossed the dark ocean, flew above the winter fields. Once more, they stood in the circle, drawn by the Conjure Woman. Madame Zena opened the door of her house. His parents took the boy from her arms, kissed his smiling face. Toby tried to tell them about his journey, about the ocean and the village, and the old ones who healed him. But they didn't hear. They were only glad to have him back, safe and well again. Madame Zena, the Conjure Woman, blessed the little family and left them to their joy.
What a great lesson for us all. We must never judge by looks alone. Would you please pray with me? Holy God, thank you for authors who write stories that help children see what often isn't seen and helps us learn to trust others who could help. Amen. So join us again next week for another edition of Reading on the Rock. Good night.
Reading on the Rock is presented by Covenant United Methodist Church in Rochester, New York. If you like Reading on the Rock, please give a donation on our website, covenantroc.org.